James Harden just delivers.
Yeah.
A 38-point triple-double. And I'm watching Giannis Antetokounmpo last night. I'm watching Giannis. And they're not even guarding him.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers are just letting him stand by himself at the three-point line. Ivica Zubac is like, nah, I'm not even going to cross the free throw line.
Yeah, and he's being told to do that.
You know, like, and I know that we argue about Giannis a lot on this show.
Yeah.
Okay, I totally
Well, I
get
think
that.
as a player, he's argued about in the big picture a lot. Like a lot. Not just us. Like, I think it's a deep conversation.
Yet people will hand him MVP trophy after MVP trophy.
Mm-hmm.
He scores, 30-something points last night? They get blown out in L.A. against the Clippers.
Yeah.
And the guy, to me, is his only success is I'm going to run as fast as I can at the basket. It's a skill. Zion Williamson is proving that. I'm going to run as fast and as hard as I can at the basket, and I'm going to shoot as many free throws as I can. All right, cool trick. You're not going to win games doing that. Oh, but this is a different Milwaukee Bucks team. Fear the deer, motherfucking duck. Okay, no. How about no? I don't fear the deer. This isn't a different Bucks team, and they're going out early in the playoffs again this year because I think the East is actually much better. And when I look at the Sixers, when I look at the Nets, those two teams are superior, in my opinion, to the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you put them in a 7-game series, I think the Bucks will lose 9 out of 10 of those series.
Yeah, I think that the major issue here with Giannis getting all these MVPs, and the reason it happens is because everyone just looks at the stat sheet. They don't look at whether the team actually won or lost a game. They don't look at, how his lack of ability to shoot a three is impacting the rest of the team, because that's really where the rubber meets the road. Think about it. You were just talking about it. Ivica Zubac is standing, essentially in the paint behind the free throw line, not having any fear that Giannis is going to shoot a ball and make a three. No fear. So what does that do? That allows the other 4 guys on the floor to play really tight to their man because Zubac is going to fill up the middle. So defensively, you've got an easy life playing the Bucks, and that's why they lose. And I think that, some of the other players that we're going to get to here, they don't have that problem, mainly because they can shoot a basketball. You're an NBA, like I've said this many times about many different players, you're an NBA player. Even if you come into this league and your jump shot is just awful, Lonzo Ball or any of these other guys, you literally every day you come to the practice facility or the arena where you're playing on the road and you have shoot around. Work on your shot, man. Like, work it. Like, if Giannis had a shot, he would be, like, way better. Like, they would be a way better team. And I agree with you that, the MVP, it is a popularity contest, and I guess that he's marketable, but I just don't think he's a lot of people say he's a top 5 player in the league. I guess it depends how you define the best player in the league. That's what this comes down to.
Oh, certainly. And I think when I look at James Harden last night putting up a 38-point triple-double in a dogfight where every basket matters.
Yeah.
And he's hitting threes, he's dropping dimes. Like, he was unbelievable in this game. Without James Harden, they don't win that game. Without Giannis, the Bucks still lose that game.
Yeah.
James Harden's the best player in the NBA right now. And looking at some of the statistics, I'm a big believer in ESPN's real plus minus. I think that LeBron James has to be in this discussion. I think he's the second best player in the league.
And really quick, just the real plus minus stat, just some of the things that go into that.
Your teammates. It essentially is how much impact do you have per 100 possessions?
Okay.
And they take a wide variety of factors into account. And the exact definition is net point differential per 100 possessions, offensive and defensive. Real plus minus takes into account teammates, opponents, and additional factors, home, road, arena, things like that.
Got it.
LeBron James, when it comes to real plus minus, is a 9.20. The next closest is Steph Curry at 7.95.
Okay.
LeBron James.
Where's James Harden?
James Harden is down the list quite a bit.
Okay.
James Harden is 12th at 4.72. A lot of that was Houston, though.
Yeah.
So I think there's some,
He's definitely taken a step up in Brooklyn. You can't dispute that.
And I think he deserves credit for that.
Yeah.
Is the roster around him better? Yes, it is. But there's no way to discount what James Harden means to the Brooklyn Nets. they're better with him. They're not great without him, especially with KD never playing for that team.
Yeah.
You look at Kyrie and James Harden together, they're a dominant force. James Harden makes Kyrie Irving. He makes him. And that's why I think they really were aggressive with Blake Griffin, who again gave a nice performance last night. They went out and got a LaMarcus Aldridge because I don't think they believe they can count on Kevin Durant. I don't
think whether you believe or not, you can't because he's always hurt.
But I don't buy into this idea that Kevin Durant, he's just saying it's a hamstring so he can rest. I don't buy into that.
Yeah.
I think he just isn't durable right now. Next year, I think he'll take a big step forward durability-wise.
Yeah.
Because he will be out of the haze of the Achilles
and the rehab
and the leg injuries, and
yeah.
he will actually be rested. But right now, I just don't know that you can count on him. Oh, by the way, I think the Brooklyn Nets are still the best team in the NBA.
Let me ask you this. When players are hurt, like whether it's Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, any of these guys, should we be holding it against them if they're out for a longer period of time because their team can hold their water without them? Like the Brooklyn Nets, to be specific, the Brooklyn Nets don't even, I think we could agree that the Nets don't need Kevin Durant to go ahead and win a championship. They don't need him. Would it be great to have him? Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if I can agree with that.
So you don't think they're good enough?
I think Brooklyn needs James, or they need three of those guys on the floor together to win a championship. Yes, I do. Well, and I think that James Harden is a guy who's shown you that, yeah, he can play, but he's relying on the three-point shot.
Well, yeah.
And I think this is a three-point league, so I get that. I mean, I look at what Luka Doncic did last night in Dallas, and I get it. It was OKC. He wrecked the Thunder with a three ball.
Yeah.
That's what this league has become.
Is, yeah.
Right? I mean, Memphis shot 31 threes last night.
Yeah.
My point is, when you live and die on the three, a lot of times you're going to die on the three. And nobody's died a more morbid, terrible public death on three-pointers than James Harden in the playoffs.
0 of 27.
So I mean, it is, he's got a track record for this.
Yeah.
And I think they need guys like KD. They need him to be the Slim Reaper.
Yeah.
Shooting the three, getting to the basket.
He puts him over the top for sure.
Yeah, because you can't tell me that Kyrie, Joe Harris, James Harden, and Kevin Durant are going to all go cold at the same time from three.
No.
That ain't happening.
No.
So I think they need Kevin Durant to win a championship. Yes, I do.
Yeah. I think without him, they're good enough to get there for sure. And I think that your point about him resting longer because of the rehab and because he's not as durable right now is well taken. And I think that, I just feel like the Nets are good enough without him that it affords him and his rehab process the luxury of not having to come back sooner. And they said at the All-Star break, they said it was going to be about 2 weeks. We're about 10 days removed from the All-Star break now, or whatever it's been. So he should be back soon, probably mid-April at this point. And if that happens, I think they're fine, because if you can come back in mid-April, you've got 6 weeks left till the playoffs, which is the stretch run of the postseason, and that's enough time for a team to come together. So hopefully he comes back, everything's cool, and they can do their thing. But I to get back to what we were talking about, yeah, I think James Harden is the best player in the league right now. I certainly think in terms of the MVP award that he is the front runner, and if he's not, I don't know who would be, because I just don't think it's Giannis, or if it is, it shouldn't be. And other guys would be LeBron, and that's basically it because of KD's injury.
Yeah, I think right now Kevin Durant's not even in the conversation. And I think until he plays 70 games at a very high level, I don't think he'll be in the conversation. I think right now the argument of the two best players in the NBA is James Harden and LeBron James. I mean, based on the numbers, based on the impact, based on their all-around abilities. LeBron's playing at a very high level defensively. James Harden, I have never seen this effort defensively out of James Harden. I don't ever remember him playing at this level defensively that we are seeing James Harden play out in Brooklyn. I don't ever remember that. So I think my personal opinion is James Harden's the best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, even with LeBron, I'm not sure there's a close second.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of credit to James Harden. Again, the defensive side is the biggest improvement. I mean, we always knew he could score. We always knew he could distribute. But I think in Mike D'Antoni's Houston Rockets offense, it was a little bit different of a setup than in Steve Nash's offense in Brooklyn. And I think that Steve Nash is a guy who understands that he just wants to put James Harden in a position on almost every possession to make a play. Whether that is the one-on-one matchup and doing his between the legs dribbling and all that on the perimeter, whether that's a drive and he kicks to Joe Harris. Basically, just give James Harden the ball, let him read the floor, and let him make decisions. And they've been doing that, and that's why he's getting his triple-doubles, and that's why Kyrie Irving is getting great looks.
Yeah, I look at James Harden, and I don't think he's ever going to get enough credit because he did what Kevin Durant did at Golden State.
Mm.
He wound up on a team that is a super team built to win a championship. So I think there'd always be a knock on him.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit subscribe on the old YouTube machine. Just search us on Google, The Monty Show. Monty, The Monty Show is where you find us on Google. Any podcast, YouTube, you name it, we're there. The Monty Show, Monty. The Monty Show. What'd you see last night? I saw the Jazz, literally, I honestly think the NBA contracted the Cavs last night.
Yeah.
I think they said, you guys suck so bad. The Jazz embarrassed you so much. We're going to have to go ahead and pull your card.
Shame.
You're out. Like, the Jazz destroyed the Cavs last night.
Yeah.
What did you learn in that game, if anything?
The first thing I want to say is I don't remember the last time I saw an NBA game with a 40-point spread on it in the third quarter. Like, they were up legitimately 40 points. Like, that's insane. In terms of what we learned last night, like, the Jazz they're a dominant team when they're not playing a good team. Like, just like any other best team in the league. Like, when teams like the Jazz or the Warriors of old or any of these great teams, when they play crappy teams, they're going to dominate them because those crappy teams turn the ball over. They don't run good offense. So, like, last night, I wasn't impressed by the win. I expected it. Like, what else do you expect? Yeah, they shot the hell out of the ball. I think the biggest takeaway from last night is guys like Ersan Ilyasova and Thomas and all these other reserve guys. Like, that was a nice run for them. I think they got 8.5 minutes at the end of the game to play together. That was nice. That was cool. Again, I just will maintain that Matt Thomas built another brick wall last night. Don't think he's made a three yet in a game for the Jazz. So, I don't know. This guy is supposed to be a great shooter. I'd like to see him start making some shots when he gets some minutes. That said, I don't think he's going to get minutes in the postseason or in close games. I think that he's just a filler on the roster, and they'll move on from him at some point. So I don't really think there was a lot to take away from last night.
Well, and the thing that I say about that is that, I look around the league at the additions, and I know we've talked about this a lot. I was really excited when the Jazz added Ersan Ilyasova. I thought it was a great pickup that could help this team. I think they're going to release him.
Yeah.
That or he's just going to languish at the end of the bench because I don't see any usable quality there. I mean, Oni's athletic, can shoot the three. Like, okay, cool. He's long. He runs. Okay, great.
And they need to develop him.
Yeah. What like any of these other guys, Matt can shoot. What's Ersan do? Because he ain't shooting the ball well.
Yeah, they put him in the post a couple of times, and he, had some interesting moments. He took a couple of threes. There wasn't like he's a stretch five. He's not quite a 7-footer, but he can guard 7-footers, and he can play the center position, and he used to be able to really shoot the three. Now, there probably should be something said for the fact that, hey, he hasn't played for a minute. They got to get back into the flow of an NBA game. They got to get their groove back. Okay, I can level with that, but at the end of the day, the Ersan Matt Thomas signing, those signings were kind of painted to us as like, hey, we're trying to make the roster better. But then don't look at Denver adding an all-star. Don't look at any of these other teams getting way better. I don't know. That's where I go every time I talk about this Jazz roster now. Every time I'm like, dude, like, wow, look at what Aaron Gordon did for Denver. Like, there's now media. Yesterday, for the first time in a long time on Twitter, I saw several outlets talking about how the Nuggets are an NBA Finals contender now that they have Aaron Gordon. And I'm just telling you, that's real, man. That is absolutely real, and it's something to be respected. And I hope that maybe the silver line here with this Cavs game and in these next few games that they have that are pretty much a cakewalk, is that they can get their as a team, they can get their shooting percentage back up to where it was. Don did what Don does. He made a bunch of shots, but I'm talking about guys like Jordan Clarkson getting out of this slump. I'm talking about Bogdanovic starting to make more shots again, like these guys that they need.
I'm really worried about Bogdanovic.
Yeah.
I think the confidence is not there. And if we're keeping it real, as we tend to do on this show, they don't win a championship without, Bogdan Bogdanovic shooting the ball well.
Yeah, they need it.
And they got to figure that out. And I don't know how you figure that out other than I think you have to play him heavy minutes every night. And you have got to bake into that boy's brain, shoot the ball.
Yes.
Every chance you get, Boyan, shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Bogey.
Yes.
Shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Like he's hesitating. He's passing. He's trying to get to the basket. He's not athletic enough to finish. And I think it is a real weakness for this Jazz team right now that he's not doing what other forwards are doing. I look at who's a real dangerous team, like the Sacramento Kings. I don't want to see that team in the playoffs, right? That's a real dangerous athletic team.
Mm-hmm.
Where does Bogdanovic fit against the Sacramento Kings? I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I look at the Lakers. Andre Drummond looks really excited to be an LA Laker.
I would be excited.
And, but right now, who's going to guard Andre Drummond? Because
it's Rudy Gobert.
you would think that's a really tough matchup for Rudy, I think.
Well, that's just, again, not to be an asshole about it, but that's his job. That's his job. I'm not going to sit here and say, it's a really tough matchup for Rudy. No, you're paid and you're a defensive-minded player. Get it done. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really difficult. I think the ability for Rudy Gobert to have a big impact in the postseason is going to be fascinating because one of two things is going to happen. Every Jazz fan who tells us to, lick our feet is somebody told us to lick our feet yesterday.
You think you know it all.
I'm not really sure what that means. Do you want me to actually on the show take my sock off and lick my foot?
What's wrong with you?
I probably haven't had that ability since I was like 11, and if I did, I'd never leave the house.
Okay.
But the point is, and it wouldn't be on YouTube.
Okay.
It would, on fans only or whatever, or only fans. Anyway, the point is, now I've gone too far. I think the real on the Utah Jazz is, one way or the other, we're going to be proven right or wrong. We haven't been wrong yet.
Nope.
Right? So if you look at the Jazz and you look at the way they match up against certain teams, I don't want anything to do with Sacramento. I don't want anything to do with Denver. I think their best matchup is probably the Lakers or the Clippers.
The Suns?
Although I think the Suns are a terrible matchup for the Jazz. In a long series, I think Mike Conley and Chris Paul's pretty close. I think Chris Paul's better.
Okay.
If you're the Suns, do you put Mikal Bridges on Donovan?
Yes.
Okay. Then it's probably Royce O'Neal and Book.
Yep.
Right?
And they'll probably try to switch that to get Book on Bogdanovic.
And I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because I think Devin Booker has figured out that when you become something more than a three-point shooter and you add in what is now a lethal mid-range game, because his mid-range game used to be good.
Mm-hmm.
It's now elite.
Yeah.
Devin Booker's got an entire bag of tricks.
Yeah.
And it's all Chris Brickley's doing, I guess. The summer run this past summer and the summer prior have absolutely changed who Devin Booker is as a player. And I think when you look at their depth, that's the other thing that is really troublesome about the Jazz. They're playing 8 guys.
Yeah, it's concerning.
And I don't – when you struggle the way Jordan Clarkson has struggled, thank God it's Memphis.
Yeah.
Right? Thank God it's Cleveland. And you have a nice stretch of games at home. And by the way, the Jazz, I think, are the best home team I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It used to be the Lakers in the early 2000s. This Jazz team just does not lose at home.
Well, I think that that's true. They don't lose at home, but the depth thing is I think is possibly the biggest issue with the roster, because if you think about it this way, let's say the starting 5 come out, they get you out to a 15-point lead heading into the second quarter, right? Let's just say that everything's going perfectly in a game 1 of the first round of the postseason. But then your second unit comes in, they're not as good, or they're not playing as well, and now your starters come back in with a 2-point lead. Well, all that hard work is just disappearing. It's evaporating because the second unit is not up to snuff. And that's the thing that I think is just is really troublesome. I look at, again, not to keep going back to the Nets, but I look at the Nets and I say, man, dude, that team is deep as hell. Like, that team has guys for days. And I'm not just talking about the starting five. I mean, you go down that roster, you've got a bunch of dudes that can score the basketball and probably would start on other teams. And that's what makes a team like the Nets so dangerous. You look at Denver, they're kind of in a similar position to the Jazz where they don't have, a ton of depth. They've got enough to get by, but not a ton. And so I guess for me, this Jazz team, I think the expectation is an NBA Finals appearance. That's where they are. I don't think the expectation quite yet is to win an NBA Finals, but it is the expectation to get there and see what you can do. And I don't think that it's just some yellow brick road, some easy cakewalk to get there with the roster that they have.
Yeah, I look at Clarkson, critical contributor.
Yeah.
Joe Ingles, just does not miss 3-pointers right now. He's
been impressive, bro.
This stretch of 3-point shooting for Jingles is probably as good as the Jazz have ever had. 3-point shooting.
Yep.
And then I look at George Niang, and I think he's giving you some real quality minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're playing those guys. Your 6, 7, 8 guys are less than 20 minutes. So you're asking guys like Bogdan Bogdanovic to play 30 minutes when he's not contributing. You're asking guys like Donovan Mitchell, and this, I guess, is my main point. I look at Donovan Mitchell, and it turns into Donovan versus everybody else.
Yep.
Because you don't have a legitimate number two, and all this stuff where they're not playing guys, and all this stuff where you're able to celebrate and have fun on the bench and stuff. That's all great. But at the end of the day, you've got to have guys off the bench who give you instant offense, but also can contribute in the fourth quarter when you need a bucket.
Yeah.
Because in the playoffs, half-court defense gets much more difficult, much more unbearable. And so I think that's going to be the real issue. Some of the other things that I saw last night, at what point does Brad Stevens get whacked?
Yeah.
In Boston. They're not good. This has to be, and I don't know, you tell me, this has to be one of the most disappointing teams in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
This Boston Celtic team getting beaten by New Orleans last night. And granted, I think Brandon Ingram's turning into this incredible shot maker. He is growing before our eyes. I'm looking at Zion Williamson dropping a Euro step last night, evolving, growing, more tools in the bag. He's more than a dunker now, which is the step we've all been waiting for. New Orleans is coming. There's no way they should be on Boston's level, especially at the Garden. There's just no way. And last night, we saw B.I. hit a real critical shot for them late, and New Orleans winds up winning. And it's this question of, at what point do you want to be the Boston Celtics again? Because this team is not right now.
Yeah, they feel like a team that's just like a rudderless ship, man. It seems like when they're playing games that they're just sort of floating along with the tide of the game. They're just kind of trying to exist right now. And in terms of Brad Stevens, I look back to when they signed Kyrie Irving. The signing of Kyrie Irving took them to a level where it was like, okay, you're going to win the East. You're gonna have to go up against Bron, who was a Cleveland Cavalier at the time, and they had that epic series, and they lost that series. Bron beat them, and inevitably goes on to the finals and does his thing. But I think that this organization really needs a breath of fresh air. They need, I'm not saying to burn the whole thing down, but I'm saying you got to move Brad Stevens and that whole coaching staff. You may consider moving Jaylen Brown, and I think you got to build a team around Jason Tatum. Or if you don't believe in these two, then it's time to move on and get to burning it down and rebuilding. But this stuff about losing to New Orleans at the Garden, not really being a high-end Eastern Conference team, not living up to the Boston Celtics brand, let's not forget the Kobe, Paul Pierce, Lakers, Celtics battles that these two organizations had. I can remember when I was, I think I was in high school, and we would go over to Mrs. Grammy's house, and we would there was one Christmas where it was Lakers it was Celtics, and Kobe and Paul Pierce were just going back and forth the entire game. And I'm just left with this Celtics team being like, dude, like, is Jason Tatum that guy? Is Jaylen Brown going to show for an entire season, or are you just going to keep giving me 20-game spurts where you're the guy and then another 20 where you're not? Like, that's the issue with this team. They're a rudderless ship. At least with the Jazz, let's say, there's direction. We know who we are. Every guy knows what he's supposed to do. Whether he's doing it or not is a different story. But, like, with the Jazz, there's direction. There's teams like the Celtics just have nothing going for them. There's no nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I look at Brad Stevens, and I know that he was critically acclaimed coming out of Butler. And
Yeah.
this is a guy, young gun, hot shot. And then what? And I think it's interesting you bring up the Kyrie Irving failed experiment. I mean, it was never close to working. So I look at that situation. I look at, he has not figured out how to get the best out of Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
He has not figured out how to develop Jaylen Brown. They've made changes roster-wise. They've stuck with Marcus Smart. The only thing that's been static there is Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to make a change there. Because at some point, I mean, at some point you'd like to win, I would think. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of it. But at some point you would like to win there.
Yep.
I would guess.